Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Joining me today on the podcast is Stacey Brown Randall. Stacey has been on the podcast twice before, and she is also the author of a new book that we're going to talk about today, the Referable Client Experience. Her first book that she did, a multiple award-winning book, was called Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. Stacey is a podcaster of the very popular podcast, Roadmap to Referrals. She's a consultant and a coach, as well as a wife and a mom of three. So listen in as we discuss the importance of creating a referable client experience. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Stacey, welcome back to the podcast.
Michelle, it's so fun to be back here with you. I always love anytime we get to spend together.
Well, we never run out of things to talk about, so it's going to be fun. Yeah, so I was looking up before our time today, and you were on in episode 27, Referrals Without Asking. So your first book, and we talked all things referrals. And then you returned in episode 150. I think it was 6 layers of referral strategy. So just talking about the different ways to create a good, robust strategy to get those referrals. And now we're going to be talking about your new book, The Referable Client Experience.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me be a repeat offender. I really appreciate it. The opportunity to come back and talk about it. And it's interesting. Like I think about there's obviously something you do when you have a second. It's when the first book comes out, but I really have felt it more with the second book coming out and now thinking about future books that I may write. And you really start paying attention to your body of work. Like you really start thinking about like the what you teach, and you just think about it, I think, in a different way, and kind of like a different way of framing it, and a different way. It just kind of, as you reflect on it and think through it and kind of pay attention to it. And it's just really, really interesting that when I look at this body of work, I'm like, wow, there was enough for another book, and there may be more for 2 more books after this. And it just goes to show when you spend a lot of time with one topic that how deep you're able to go with that topic.
It's so true. You and I met back in 2018 at a Power Talk Friday with Luann Nagara in High Point in North Carolina. And then the book that we were in together, the first Friday, the Power Talk Friday edition of Luann's came out. And at the time, you and I mean, we just kind of like clicked, right? Because I was like, oh, super savvy woman up there talking. And I think you mentioned that, kind of feeling like, oh, she really knows what she's talking about too, when I was up there. And it's been interesting, even though I've not written a book, I built software. And the software that I built is all of the financial pieces. And so when you're talking about like your own body of work, that's kind of what happened when I built the software. I was looking at writing a book and I thought, what am I going to do? Sit and write a book to tell you how to go build a spreadsheet? Like it, for what I was doing, it just felt like I was putting another amount of work on somebody versus it couldn't be used as the aid that I needed it to be. And a better delivery mechanism for that body of work was software. And so I love how like there's this delivery mechanism as well to the body of work and the information that we're sharing, whether it be in written form. I think you have the audio book, I have software, spreadsheets, whatever it might be. But really being able to go deeper, deeper, deeper in understanding, it's almost like I find it. I remember at one point, when you're younger, they say, hire your kid at 16. They're as smart as they're ever going to be. They act like they know everything and we're so stupid. But as they get older, we all start to realize, oh my gosh, what we know is so minimal in the grand scheme of all things that are known. And I think too, the deeper I get in to the area that I'd love to concentrate on, which is the profitability and the numbers. And for you, the referrals and the client experience around referrals and that relationship building and all of that. The more we're in it, there's a part of it where it's almost like I've scratched the surface, and then other places where I feel like I've dug really, really deep. Do you kind of have that same, it's kind of a juxtaposition of I've barely touched it and oh my gosh, I've plumbed the depths.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think when you look at the second book in particular, it's like I feel like there's so much in there. And then I remember everything we cut out of it because it just
Right.
didn't fit, or it was too deep, or it was like it became too clunky. It was asking too much of the reader, and it wasn't moving them along and getting them where they needed to be. Like, you need the overview, the big picture, but you also need like the implementation, like what are the things I can do? And that like balancing act, oh, it's so hard.
It
And I
really
think it
is.
yeah, I think it kind of applies to like anything we do in business,
Right.
right? It's like all the stuff that we understand and all the stuff that we know. In some areas, we're like, I can't go any deeper. Like, I know all there is to know. And then sometimes I'm like, wait a minute. There's actually so much more because, times change, things shift. Like, it's funny, like some of the stuff I teach, I have been teaching it for 12 years. And some things I teach the exact same way I taught them 12 years ago because the strategies I teach and referrals in general are like evergreen. And then there are other things that I teach differently. Not that what I teach is different, but I think when you look at how I get people's attention around it are different. Like, I used to never have to talk about you cannot fully automate your client experience. You cannot make everything automated. That used to never be something 12 years ago I'd have to talk about. But in today's age, everyone's like, what's faster? What's efficient? Like, how do I make this happen quicker? Where's my easy button? I'm like, slow down. You have to balance out the efficiency, the automation with the high touch and engagement.
That's right. That's right. It is there. The whole landscape of everything is shifting. Years ago, you're fine with a spreadsheet, and now everybody's like, I want all the spreadsheets to talk. Where are all the macros? How does everything work across? Same kind of thing. So let me ask you, Stacey, would you say that are these books, the referrals without asking and the referable client experience, is there an order or can they be read either one first as people are thinking about grabbing them?
Yeah, I think they can be read in any order. They
Okay.
don't tackle the same topics. And this kind of goes back to our layering conversation we had on episode 150. And I've always talked about this from the perspective of what I teach with referrals is referrals are not a nail and the only tool you need is a hammer. I teach referrals like they're an ecosystem and they exist within your business. And there are different levels or layers that you can have within your business. And that's really important for people to know. Getting referrals from your client experience is one of the things that I think you should be doing. But the first book actually speaks to a different foundational strategy, which is getting referrals from people who already refer you. So some people will come to me like, okay, I read your book. That's it. I got it. I know what I need to do. And I'm like, no. I teach 20 different referral strategies right now. That doesn't mean I won't be teaching 25 a year from now, but I teach 20 different strategies. Some are big, some are small, some are like, know how to say this when this happens, and others are put this plan in place and run it every year. And so the first book speaks to one of my foundational strategies, which is more referrals from people who already refer you. And then this book, The Referable Client Experience, speaks to another one of those foundational strategies about generating referrals from your clients while they're in that client experience. And they're separate, but most businesses need and want both. So it doesn't
Sure.
matter the order you go in, but
Okay.
because they speak to different areas.
Perfect. So let's dive in a little bit on this new book and talk about it. And then I will make sure that we link in the show notes the last two conversations that we've had so people can go back and hear all the final details on all those. So let's jump in. And I would love to hear. So you have 20 strategies. You've written about the first one. Now you've written about a second one. What of all of the strategies, what made you choose this one as the next, I'm going to say big topic to dig into in a much deeper way to make it a book?
Yeah, so the first book was focused on getting more referrals from people who already refer you. That actually means you have to have people referring you. So it really does speak to the person, typically, not always, but has been in business for a number of years,
Hmm.
right? And I used to tell folks, like, if you have people referring you now, here's what we look at to getting more referrals from them. And if you're not getting referrals from folks, right, that doesn't mean that's not a place to start. But the truth is, I used to always give this disclaimer, and it was always like, when you're generating more referrals from your existing referral sources, I'm assuming you're referable. And it became like this thing I constantly talked
Yep,
about.
I
Like,
remember
I'm
that.
right, I'm making some assumptions here that you're the disclaimer is that you actually have a referable client experience. And so when I sat down to think about, okay, of my three foundational strategies, which one would I want to write a book about next? I could have picked the other one, the one I haven't written about yet, which will probably be book number three. But I was like, no, I need to get back to the answering the question I always bring up for people with a disclaimer is like, but are you referable? And this book is the difference between it is that I want you to understand what it looks like to be referable. And then the book teaches you how to bridge the gap to actually getting referrals. And that's a piece I think people miss because lots of people will come to me and they'll be like, hey, my clients love me. I get great testimonials. I get great online reviews. They give me great feedback. They tell me that they love you. They tell me that they love me. They come back to work with me again or they're with me forever. And I'm like, that's amazing. And are you drowning in referrals? And they're like, no. So what am I doing wrong? And I'm always like, you're probably not doing anything wrong. You just don't know how to bridge the gap to generating referrals from that client experience. But what I find is a lot of people think they're referable. They think their client experience is locked and loaded, even when they do get good reviews or good testimonials. And then they go through the process with me and they're like, oh, I could probably make this client experience even better and even easier for me as a business owner to deliver on it, and then learn to bridge the gap for referrals.
Okay, I love that idea because the truth comes down to just because somebody had a good experience with us, if we don't have that good, repeatable client referable type process, I know I've worked with people that I came out okay on the other side, but I thought to myself, but I don't know how that's going to be for other people. Or I don't know if was I special? Was this a normal? Right? So you start to hesitate as the client referring other people if you're just not sure.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of times when what I think people forget is usually when like let's just take you and I for example, right? So if I was referring you to someone and I had worked with you and I knew that was like regardless of kind of like how I felt after it, what people forget is like when you and I have a conversation and you're like, okay, like when I'm talking to someone else about referring them to you, we're having a conversation about my experience. Right. And what people think I'm going to only talk about are the results. And they're big and they're important and they go in our testimonials and we want them in our online reviews. But what I actually tell my friend who I am going to actually refer to you is actually how I feel, how
Yes,
I felt.
that's right.
And when things don't go according to plan, how did Michelle make me feel? And when I had all this crazy success, like what were the conversations that we had? And did I feel like I like decided to hire Michelle and then I never heard from her again, right? Or like it took 6 months or whatever it is, right? We're going
Right.
to talk about how we feel because that is actually how we define our client experience. And that's for every business. Your client experience is how a client feels when they are working with you. And that is what they talk about. They talk about how they feel when they're talking to someone else about referring them to you. They will talk about if they got results or didn't get results, right? But I've had people referred to me and they're like, hey, I was referred by, name a client of mine. And I'll think to myself, I don't know if they had the results they ultimately wanted. And so I'll talk about that. I'll be like, okay, so you guys talked about like this client worked with me. Did you talk about her experience? Did you talk about the results and things like that? And 9 times out of 10, I will find that a person's like, yeah, they told us like if you don't do the work, it doesn't happen. And that person, like I find with a lot of folks with the client experience, like if they're taking responsibility for if they did the work or not as well. So I think it's how we're set up. And I think it's that idea of how you make them feel. Oh, sometimes not even if they, or maybe because they didn't get the results they wanted, if the client has that maturity to kind of take it on themselves.
What's been so interesting is I know I came to the realization that how we make them feel matters a long, long, long time ago. And I can remember having conversations like we, in the fall just did an event, a large event. And for my team, we always have the conversation, how do we want them to feel when they come? What are the words that we're using as descriptors of the event? And then how do we use those words and put them into action so that they actually felt that way while they were there. Like, so a lot of times people will say, Michelle, when I work with you, it's like a spa day for my business. Well, that's because we want them to feel held and relaxed and cared for and seen. And, you're not in this by yourself. And so we even send them a card that says, relax, we've got you. We do things that kind of fit and feed into the feeling that we want them to have. And so it's so important. Otherwise, we're just kind of leaving it open to interpretation. And a lot of times, right, people feel, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but people feel the way we tell them to feel, right? Meaning, if I constantly am subliminally or even just out loud saying, I want you to feel cared for, our goal is to make you feel cared for. We're here to care for you. Then at the end of the day, if we've done our job well, we've projected how we want them to feel in the whatever that interaction or experience is with us, we've put a word around it, and then we've done what we believe needs to be done to make them feel that way. Then when you ask somebody, how did you feel? They're going to, oh man, I felt so cared for. Right? They're going to give us those words back because we set the intention and then drove towards the things that made them feel that by reiterating it with our words, right? And so I think a lot of this comes back, at least from my experience, and I'd love to see if you feel the same way, Stacey, is with us as the owners of the referable business being intentional about how we want them to feel in that experience and then driving our processes to make that a reality.
Yeah, we actually tackle that in chapter 3 of the book. We call it the ideal client reaction script. And it's not
Mm,
so much a script as much as it is like figuring out how do you want your clients to feel? What are the adjectives? What are the descriptors you want them to use when they're talking about working with you? And then really getting clear on what those are. And you don't need like 15, right? Most people find somewhere like in the 3 to 5 range, sometimes a little more. I try to tell folks don't do less than 3, but how do you want them to feel? What are those ideal client reactions you want them to have? And then you kind of like build like that is it's almost like a subsection of your mission statement, right? Or a
that's
subsection
right.
of your values, right? It's like here's how we want our clients to feel. And you put it in writing and you get really clear on how you want your clients to feel. And then you pay attention to those reactions as you're building out. And in most cases of my clients, we're not building a brand new client experience. We're just improving the one that they have. Or we're going from being unintentional to intentional with the client experience that they have. And we're going back to that ideal client reaction. And we're like, okay, you said you want them to feel cared for. At this stage, what does that look like?
That's
Right.
right.
At this stage, what does that look like? Like, so let's just use an example from the interior design industry. One of the things I always talk about with my interior designers when I'm working with them on referrals is that the truth is, once all like you've done like the new client stage stuff, and now the client is like, they've seen it, they know it's coming, and now they're like sitting and waiting, and they're playing the waiting game because nothing usually goes according to plan from an ordering perspective, and you got to wait on contractors and right all the things. And so every client with an interior designer is going to hit this moment where the interior designer has done as much as they can up to a point, and now we got to wait on others to do their job. And so we have a waiting game, and the client's waiting with them. And I always tell them, I was like, what does it feel like to be a client in the waiting game? And then if you could do anything to help them not feel that way and it mapped back to your ideal client reaction, what would that look like? And what would you do during that time? And so that's how I tell folks to think about the client experience. And that really, when we map out our ideal client reaction, is how do you want them to feel? And then are you doing things within your client experience that speak to that?
Yes, because one of the things we used to look at was, oh my gosh, we would send them like let's say a Starbucks gift card and go, wow, the wait can be long. Go have a cup of coffee while you wait. Like just even little things that you could do. But identifying, like one of them was we would send them out to a good meal. Like, here, go have dinner on us. We know that your kitchen is a hot mess. It's been torn apart. Here's a good dinner out. Like you don't want to live in the dust. And we would write things like we knew how to express that we were seeing and feeling what they were seeing and feeling in the moment. So it's that recognition of, I know where you are in the process, and I know how frustrating or irritating or happy or whatever the reaction might be, right? But it's really taking that full ownership of how they feel from beginning to end. And what I love about, I haven't read your book. I'm ready for it. It's not out. It's not out in our hands yet at the time of this interview. It's coming. And it will be out by the time that this airs, and I will have read it by then, I'm certain. But what I love is that it if we care about this, it forces us out of necessity to truly put ourselves in the shoes of our client as opposed to only putting ourselves in our shoes. You know, lately, in some different contract negotiations in my life and in our business, and everybody goes and reads the contract to their own benefit. So when I'm working on contracts with my clients, I'll usually say to them, be so clear because they're going to read that contract to their benefit and you're going to read it to yours. Well, in this client experience, if you will, if we're only looking at how we feel as the business owner, it is so easy to miss the client experience. We can almost come at it for, they should be thankful. They have no idea what we're doing. I'm already doing all these things. But if the client has no idea about all of that, their interpretation, the story they tell themselves, their experience could lead them to a different feeling or a different outcome than the one that we're trying to create slash project. And so by putting ourselves in their shoes and walking through our process, I love how you said it right at that. We all hit the wall in the process. Like the hope is usually that the spouses don't hit it at the same time, but recognizing that the wall's coming, the designer hits the wall, the clients hit the wall. We just are all trying to make sure we're not hitting it together, right? But it's putting yourself in their shoes. How would this look from their vantage point? How would this feel from their vantage point? And that is the intentionality, but that's the ownership that we have. And while it comes with a lot of weight, it comes with a lot of power, don't you think? The power of the business owner to change and shift the wording, the direction, the interaction to elicit the outcome that I desire.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I start chapter 4 of the book with a story of working with an interior designer and this whole idea of what I thought the process looked like, and in reality, what the actual process looked like. But at the time, I mean, and this was decades ago. This was like right after we brought Mackenzie home from the hospital. And, you know, that girl's 15 now. So we're talking this a really, really long time ago. But, or at least it feels like a long time ago. Maybe it wasn't technically that long ago. But in that idea of like what we think it's going to look like as clients, we make assumptions.
That's right.
And the reality of it is if you don't share with us what those expectations are and what to expect, we will make up our own stories in our own minds, and it
Yes.
will always be to our own benefit. And so yeah, I tell that story as like, you know, I told the interior designer what I was looking for. Everything about that first meeting was amazing. She went off to design it. And then I thought I would hear back from her sooner than I did. And I felt like I was hearing crickets. And she's probably thinking, you know, it's not just some paint colors and some carpet. Like we're redesigning an entire master suite and bathroom. Like it's going to take a little bit longer, but not having those expectations set for me just created a story that I told myself in my own head.
Right.
And that impacted, right? Like the ultimate, like how I felt. Did I get
Yeah.
the same great outcome? Yes. But through the process, I was feeling something different. And that's what people miss about the client experience is that even if the results are great, if I don't feel a certain way through the process, it actually can cloud the results that I get as well. And sometimes we can't solve that problem for our clients. Sometimes we have clients that are just difficult.
Sure.
Let's be
Sure.
honest, right? We've all had that client that like got the results that they wanted, got better results than they anticipated, loved all the things that you did, and for some reason still found a reason not to be happy because one little thing didn't go according to plan that had zero bearing on the actual results that they got. And so we'll always have clients like that. And I'm not talking about building a client experience or trying to save them in a client experience, right? Totally different from that perspective.
Yes.
But I think that's the thing that people kind of overlook and they kind of miss is that you have a client experience. Whether you're intentional about it or unintentional about it, doesn't matter. You have a
That's
client
right.
experience. Your clients are feeling things. It's paying attention to what that is and then the what you do to either overcome, right? The feelings that they have, or to help them feel the way you want them to feel through different moments, and being cognizant of that as they move through the client experience stage. Because if you don't have any of that in place, you can't actually bridge the gap to getting referrals from them as well. It's like first be referable, then we can worry about actually generating referrals. And I think when people want to jump straight to well, just tell me the things I need to do and say to get referrals, I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work that way if your clients don't have the feelings that we want them to have after working with you.
Because really, I think it comes down to, as the business owner, I should have that knowledge. I shouldn't have to come to you and say, make me referable or tell. I should pay enough attention. Like what you're guiding them to do is pay enough attention to the nuance of your own business that you can start to see where it's not working. I mean, certainly you've got strategies and goals, but just like you said, you may not know every single part of their process. That's where they know that process. And they should be able to step back and put themselves in the position of the client. You know, when we renovated our kitchen a couple of years ago, and I do this, I teach this, I've been in this, for 25 years. But there is something about going back to being the client. And so I say that because even though I knew it, I put myself in the position of the client. And then I'm like, I'm feeling all the things. I'm hitting the walls. I'm seeing it. I'm feeling it. And I'm thinking, I really like your process. I don't like your process. I really like how that made me feel. You reached out before I could come to you. You made me feel unseen and unheard. Like I could tell you because number one, I was looking for it, but I wasn't intentionally looking for it, but because I'd been talking and teaching and all the things about being intentional with what we do. I i like i could literally feel my body and everything reacting and starting to wonder, why am I having emotions about things that I should have a very business mindset about? And then realizing, because it's a human experience. And I think it's that invitation as business owners. Yes, we're doing business, but we're really having a human to human interaction, a human to human connection. And there's that adage, what is it? And I may butcher it, Stacey, but it's something like, people might not remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And that's,
It's the Maya Angelou quote.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I knew
Well,
it was out there. I just didn't know who said it, but it's that idea, right? Of you could get it all right, but if you made them feel crappy all the way through, they got the outcome, but it certainly wasn't in a way that felt life-giving to them.
yeah. And sometimes you can't make that work for clients, but most of the time you
Sure.
can. And it's how you handle certain moments. What I find with most business owners is that they're very clued in to what their clients are going through and the steps in the process. But because you have multiple clients typically going through different places and parts of the client experience, because clients start at different times, it's not like all clients you're going to work with start on January 1st and end on December 31st, right? You've got clients coming in January, and you've got new clients who don't start until November. And so the idea there is how do you build a repeatable referable client experience that you can make sure that it's being executed on for each person. And even though business owners probably are innately aware of how their client experience unfolds, until you really break it down by writing down this is one of my favorite things I have people do. We do it in the book too. It's like, write down what you're doing now. Like, what is your client experience start to finish? And I don't give, like, it's very early in the book. I don't give any other information about the client experience until that step is done. It's like, okay, here's what you've written out. You probably think you have a great client experience. And then we start unpacking the formula of your client experience, the three stages of your client experience, what you need to be overcoming in each of those three stages, what you need to be paying attention to with your ideal client reaction script, what are pitfalls to avoid in each stage, what are best practices to consider in each stage. And this is all before we get to the point where you can actually start generating referrals, right? Actually doing things to generate referrals that are outside of just being referable. We do all of that. And most people are like, oh, like I knew that these are things that I needed to do, but until you take a concentrated effort to like sit down and map it out and then pay attention to your gaps and to see where gaps are. And gaps are like in the new client stage, there's always buyer's remorse, right? It doesn't actually matter how excited you are to work with somebody. You will always have that moment of the dissonance in your head. You're like, oh, wait, did I make the right choice? Do you know how to overcome that in your client's mind in a way that will impact not just their rational side, but their emotional side?
Emotional. Yes.
And that's the piece that I find that business owners, they know they get, but in the busyness of everything, they forget to do it as well as they could. And then they fail to make it repeatable. And that is where your client experience really starts to sing, is the things that you put in place happen for all clients, not just because you remembered to do it or because you weren't so busy you had time to do it.
Yeah, and that is so important, making sure that it's repeatable so that if I send somebody to you, they have the same opportunity for the same amazing feelings and outcome that I had. Because that I always talk about it like there's this place that I went that had an amazing meal. And if I send somebody else there and if the meal is terrible or the wait staff is horrible to them, is that they're not going to like it the same way. It's almost like then they lose trust in me because they go, what did you send me to? Like, what was that? Right? So just making sure that to your point, we can't make everybody happy all the time. And some people are difficult, but we can give them the same opportunity for the same type of experience and feelings because we have that repeatable process.
Yeah, and then in some cases, it's like when you know a client isn't having the client experience you want them to have, or maybe the client that came before them had, it's really important that you've got the ability just to own that.
Yeah.
Like just own it. Be like, hey, you had to come to me before I had to come to you. That's not how we like to work it. I apologize. Let me catch you up so that you're in the know, right? Like the things that like I have a lot of people who come to me and they're like, I have a client experience. And I'm like, great, tell me all about it. And then what they tell me is how they solve problems when things don't go according to plan. And customer service is important, but it's not the totality of your client experience. But it
Yes.
is important. You got to have that because some things will always go wrong. Like it just no one's going to have a perfect experience every single time.
Mhm.
Or if you do have a perfect experience, every client that you work with this year may not have the exact same experience. And it's the ability to have that repeatable client experience in place that's happening, and then also knowing when the human needs to show up and be like, okay, let me tell you, let me catch you up, let me explain what's happening, let me explain why this is happening. It's a give and take. There's a true balance between the automation and the efficiency that you want your client experience to be, and understanding that there is a high touch and engagement and a connection that needs to be made as well.
And I think that it's going to probably become more and more important that we segregate and have opportunity for both as we move forward because, AI and automation is, I mean, we've been hearing about automation for years. We all have automated experiences for parts of what we do. And I am a fan of automating as much as I possibly can if it allows the experience to be what we need it to be. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. And just as more and more of it and technology is constantly growing and achieving, it's going to get more and more and more. I mean, I'm seeing people now that are putting up videos of themselves with an AI model overlay where it says they're saying things they're not saying.
It's freaky.
It's freaky. And so, if we look at the bad part of that, it could be used in a nefarious way. Right. But there is a good part of that in that I could create a script, create a thing, and then substitute names and just have AI overlay certain things. Now, I'm not there. I'm not doing it. Don't no, nobody come at me thinking I'm doing all that because I'm not. But I'm just saying technology is going to shift that there may come a time where we're going to be hard pressed to determine what is real and what's automated.
Yeah,
But
and I think that'll actually probably backfire for a lot of folks. Like I think we'll get to the point where you can't really tell what's real or what we're there now, right?
yes,
Sometimes people
yes,
can't tell what's real and what's not. And then the
correct.
minute we get an inkling that this is not real and you presented it as it being real, I think it comes back to bite you in the rear. And we're
I
experiencing
agree.
that now though. Like I have people still debate me. 2025, people are still debating me about if they should handwrite the thank you note for the referred client or the referred prospect they just received versus having a robot do it for them, like some company do it for them, or having someone on their team do it. It's like our old traditional AI quandary. It's like
Yes.
who writes the thank you card? I'm like, can you not write the thank you card? Like, can you not spend the 60 seconds saying thank you for someone, particularly when someone just referred you something that maybe 50,000, 100,000, $500,000 worth of business for you? Like, can you not stop to write the thank you note? But I still have that to this day. People like argue about who has to write the thank you note and can I hand that off to someone else? I think that's like a microcosm of like how it's always been to what's happening with AI. And I think from a client perspective, it depends on how you manage my expectations. right? If you manage my expectations and I know things are going to be AI related and here's the things that are and here's the things that aren't, then I don't have usually like a negative reaction to
That's
seeing.
right.
But it's when people like don't act like it's fake and then you find out that it's fake. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
it does
it's
so much more
miserable.
damage.
Well, it erodes trust. Jesse Itzler, do you know him? He's married to Sarah, that did Spanx and Sneaks and okay. He says, and it's so interesting, every day he does five handwritten letters or five reach outs to people because he's got his huge referral network. Like he connects all the time. But his thing is he spends like five reaches out every day, either by phone, text, email. He loves a handwritten card, but he does it to continue to build relationships every day. And then when he needs to refer, he already has the relationship to refer. And I think that connection is part of what some of us have lost over the last few years is that staying connected and being referable, even when there's nothing to refer, so that when there's somebody to refer to, they're there, right?
Yeah, I think it's recognizing that this is one thing I always tell folks is like, okay, I want to build a referable client experience. What percentage of my clients should I expect will actually start referring me? I'm like, our goal, depending on where you're starting from, right? But our goal for most of us is I'm like, you need to know that probably only 20 to 30% of your clients will refer. And once you can get it to that point, then we can grow it, right? Then we can increase it. Because the truth is it's not just you gave this a great experience to me. Now I'm going to run out and find 15 people that I can refer to you. There also has to be opportunity.
That's right.
And some of your clients are not going to come across the opportunity to refer you the way you want them to, regardless of how amazing you are. So you're still also paying attention to not only are we building this amazing client experience that makes us referable for every client, we also recognize that there's a smaller subset of clients that actually are going to come across opportunities and the right people to refer to us. And so we want to make sure we're prepared for that. But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of folks who are like, I mean, I should be able to get a referral from every single client that I work with. And I'm like, that doesn't mean that every single client is going to actually be able to refer you, but you don't know which will and which won't. So you need to have that referable client experience in place. And then if you're doing certain things along the way, you'll see who it percolates for and where those referrals come from. And then of course, right, once a client starts referring you, well, then that's what we have my first book for, right? It's like, okay, now this person's referring you. Here's how we keep that going. Because eventually for some people, the clients aren't your clients forever.
That's right. That's right. So, Stacy, tell us where, how can we find the book? Do you have anything else coming out? Like, is there, I think you said there was an audio book as well, right?
Yeah, so the book is available. It is printed, audio, and an ebook, of course. So all formats. Wherever you like to purchase books is where you can find the Referable Client Experience. And I am the author reader of the audiobook. It's a whole other situation. That's a whole other process. After you write a book, you're like, oh my God, now I have to read the whole thing like on a recording. But it's a lot of fun to do it. But yeah, all formats are available for the book to be purchased.
That's awesome. And so we will link those in the show notes as well. Stacy, let me ask you this. Where can people find you if they want to follow along, learn more, take some of your training? Because let's don't forget the fact that your book is, I'm going to say, an outpouring of all of the work and training that you've been doing, and you do still offer all of that training. So one to one, because sometimes we can pick up a lot of great things from a book, but sometimes we just need somebody to hold our hand and walk and live it with us for a while. What is your website and where can they find you?
Yeah, so the home base for the website is stacybrownrandall.com, and Stacy is spelled with an E. I know you'll link to it in the show notes. And really, there I always tell folks is you can find out information on my podcast, Roadmap to Referrals, the first book, of course, the second book, but also learn about how to work with me. My business runs a little bit different than some coaches and consultants run their business. I don't necessarily just teach this one strategy to this one strategy, and that's like an a la carte get the strategies that you want. I like to work with companies or clients where I get to go in and look at their ecosystem of referrals in their business. And whether they're doing that through a 2-day workshop with me or a 12-month coaching program, or I'm doing it for them as a VIP, we look at all the facets of where referrals are probably hiding or should be in their business. And so most of my clients, when I work with them, they're going to get access to all of the strategies that I teach. And it's not just a onesie twosie from that perspective. So we kind of map out exactly what that looks like on the website and in our programs tab.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for being a three-peater on here 3 times. I am excited to get my hands on a copy of the book and to read it. And who knows, we may just have to have you on for a fourth time to keep talking about it.
I would love that.
I
Thank you.
know, imagine. Well, Stacey, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Stacey, thank you so much for the conversation today. I know that this new book is going to be a hit, much like the very first one. So make sure that you're also listening to Roadmap to Referrals podcast for more in-depth learning on this topic. You know, here at Scarlet Thread Consulting and in Matrique Solutions, our goal is to empower you, the business owner, to know and understand your financials, to be able to have a strategic plan that you can use that guides where you're going, and then also to have a framework for your decision making. In other words, our goal is to help you be very intentional about the business that you're building. You are building the business, it's not just happening to you. To do this, we offer courses, we offer coaching, and this very podcast to continue to build your awareness and your financial muscle so that you can understand that profitability happens one decision at a time. We would love to support you in a multitude of ways, from our CFO to Go program or in our Designers Inner Circle. To learn more, you can go to scarletthreadconsulting.com and go to the Work With Me tab. Choose each day to be profitable because profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening, and stay creative and business minded.